So I heard a story this week, and it's about a pastor who dies and goes to heaven. So I'm assuming that story was made up. I don't know. Pastor dies, he goes to heaven, and he gets in line at the pearly gates. And apparently there's a long line up there, and he strikes up a conversation with the guy right in front of him, Joe the plumber. No, not that Joe. It was another Joe the plumber. Actually, it wasn't a plumber, it was a taxi cab driver. But I like Joe the plumber, so what am I going to say? So they're chit-chatting for a while, waiting for their time to get up to St. Peter, and he finds out he's a taxi cab driver, and he finds out he's a pastor, and he says, oh, you're a pastor. I can't imagine your reward when you get here. I mean, I was just a taxi cab driver. In fact, I hardly ever went to church, but I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad I got in. So they get to the golden gates, the pearly gates, and St. Peter says, oh, you're the taxi cab driver. Welcome. All the angels get up and they start applauding. And they say, we can't wait to show you what we got for you. And they show him this huge, beautiful mansion on his own lake with a golf course in the backyard on the edge of the forest. Perfect, beautiful place. And they all applaud as they usher him into his mansion. And the pastor's thinking, whoa, that's what a taxi cab driver gets? I can only imagine what I'm going to get. So he gets up in line, and St. Peter looks up and says, oh, yeah, you're Pastor Smith. Follow Joe, the taxi cab driver. You got a little house on the edge of his property. Next. And the pastor says, whoa, wait a minute. You mean to tell me I've spent my entire life serving the Lord, and I just get a little shack on the edge of this guy's property? He's a taxi cab driver, and he gets this beautiful estate? I don't understand. And he said, listen, Pastor, we work by results here. You know, when you preached, people fell asleep. But when he drove, people prayed. So I'm thinking he drove in New York. How many of you have been in a taxi cab in New York? How many of you thought it was a mistake? Frightening. You know, they've got driving down to a science in New York, though, I got to tell you. You got a line at the red light of cars, and when the light turns green, everybody hits their gas pedal at the same time. Seriously. You could be 10 rows back, you hit the gas pedal. Now here, we wait for the car in front of us to go. But there, they all go at the same time. So if you're the guy from out of town, and you don't hit the gas pedal, they swear at you. And they honk their horns. Chicago, it's the same thing. The taxi cab drivers, they all must be on cocaine, I swear. As soon as the light blinks, they're honking their horn. It's like, dude, the light just changed. The only time it's dangerous to cross the streets in Chicago is with the light. I kid you not. If it says walk, you're in trouble. You've got to wait. You've got to wait till it turns red. We lived real close to downtown Chicago, and I worked in downtown Chicago. And there was this one intersection that we had to take to get home. It was right in the middle of the heart of Chicago, so you know it was extremely active. And the light would turn, and you know that here there's always one guy who tries to go through the light, maybe two guys to try to catch it, and he runs the red, and you're like, oh. There, at that intersection, they never stopped. They would go through the whole light cycle. You would actually have to risk your car and your safety to pull out into the intersection on your green light so that they wouldn't run into you. So I understand how the taxi cab driver got into heaven. I know where the rest of them are going now. John, no offense. All right. Why did I tell that story? We're going to be talking about rewards. In fact, what we've done this morning is several people who are involved in a ministry got this really cool certificate thanking them for their volunteering at Book of Life. And their team leader personalized a card for them and gave them this really cool bookmark about serving in the heart of Jesus. And we just thought once a year or so, we wanted to, tell the people who work on our teams how much we appreciate what they do, even though their service is for the Lord. And so the question is, when we get to heaven, will we be rewarded? In fact, are there levels of reward in heaven, levels of heaven? And are there levels of reward in hell? Or levels of punishment in hell? So that's what this morning's lesson is going to be all about. According to the Bible, everyone's going to answer to God someday, from the taxi cab driver and the pastor all the way down the list. The Old Testament says it, the New Testament says it. Listen to what it says. Old Testament. God is going to judge everything we do, whether good or bad, even things done in secret. So we're going to give an account to God. New Testament, Romans 14. And so each one of us must give an account to God for what we do. Jesus talked about it a lot. He said this, "The Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will pay back each person in light of what he has done." You notice I got the MOV up there today. Pay back. Because I looked at that and it said reward. The Son of Man is going to come with his angels and reward everybody. Well, reward in our culture is a positive word. And I wanted to know, is he just talking about heaven, or is he also talking about hell? Is it going to go both ways? So I looked at the Greek, and sure enough, this had nothing to do with just reward. Basically, he's saying Jesus is going to pay back everybody for good or bad. Those who've done good, they're going to get paid good. Those who've done bad, they're going to get paid bad in accordance with what they've done. The Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and he will pay back for better or for worse. Everyone who gets to heaven gets the good side. Everyone goes to hell, gets the bad side. Levels of heaven, levels of reward, levels of hell, levels of reward. That's what I want to talk about. And obviously, I want to end on a positive note, so we're going to start with hell, so we can get past it. Here's what Jesus said. "The servant who knows his master's will and does not do what his master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked." So people ask me, "Steve, do you believe there's levels of hell?" And I say, yes, I do. I don't mean levels in the sense of the basement, first floor, second floor. I mean some people are going to suffer worse in hell than other people. Don't think that means, oh, well, I'm going to get off easy in hell. There's no easy in hell. Hell's a bad place, period. But obviously, it's going to be much worse for a guy like Stalin, who murdered tens of millions of people, than it's going to be for the guy who lived next door who just decided never to follow God. Both of them have a lot to account for. But Stalin's got to get paid back worse. I mean, how fair would God be if my neighbor got it as bad as Stalin? That wouldn't be right. And so Jesus talked about that. He said, oh, there's going to be punishment, but it's going to be much worse for some than for others. In fact, he went on in another place to tell a story to his disciples. He lived in a town for a while called Capernaum. So that was his home operating base. It's right by the Sea of Galilee. And by Capernaum, there were two other towns that he often visited that pretty much you could, if you stood up on the hill, you could see the other towns. So they weren't like a comfortable walking distance, but they kind of made a triad of towns that he would visit. And hey, if you were from Capernaum, they knew you in Chorazin. If you were in Chorazin, they knew you in Bethsaida, that kind of thing. Three little towns, kind of like Tucson, South Tucson, and Marana, if we were a lot smaller. Or Vail, Tucson. You know, we're kind of the same thing, even though technically we're different. It was like that. They came from these towns. Here's what he taught. In the towns where Jesus had worked most of his miracles, don't let that get by you. There were three towns where he did most of his miracles. Now, you've read the book. You've heard the stories. He was a wonder worker. And yet there were these three towns where he did most of them. So what do you think happened in those towns? Oh, they all got converted. In the towns where Jesus had worked most of his miracles, the people refused to turn to God. So Jesus was upset with them. And he said, you people of Chorazin are in for trouble, or woe is you in the King James. You people of Bethsaida are in for trouble too. Because if the miracles that took place in your towns had happened in Tyre and Sidon, they would have put on sackcloth and ashes and repented a long time ago. I tell you that on the day of judgment, the people of Tyre and Sidon will get off easier than you will. And people of Capernaum, he saved the best for last, where he lived. You people of Capernaum, do you think you'll be honored in heaven? You will go down to hell. For if the miracles that took place in your town had happened in Sodom, that town would still be standing. So I tell you that on the day of judgment, the people of Sodom will get off easier than you. Are there levels of punishment? Oh, yes, there are. And Jesus is saying, listen, I lived in this town. Can you imagine that? I have always heard people say, I'd believe in God if he'd just show me a miracle. I can tell you right now, it has nothing to do with anything. People have seen God's miracles and refused to follow him.